you see those mummy movies?
There have been lots of mummy movies over the years. I mean, dating back to the 30s and 40s. You know, more recently, modern times, we had 1999's The Mummy with Brendan Fraser. I love that movie. That's like a near perfect action movie. The two sequels, however, The Mummy Returns and The Mummy Tomb of the Dragon Emperor, well, you know, not so good. And the less said about the Tom Cruise reboot from a few years ago, the Tom Cruise The Mummy movie, the better. I love you, Tom, but not very good. Now, this past weekend gave us the release of Lee Cronin's The Mummy. Lee Cronin is the man behind some good horror stuff. He did Evil Dead Rise a few years ago. That was a really good movie. So what do we have here? The Lee Cronin's The Mummy, Rise of the Challenge, adding itself as one of the classics of the genre, or is this, you know, like good old Tom Cruise's movie from a few years ago? Not very good, didn't make a lot of money. Well, before we answer that, let's talk a little bit about the plot to the film Lee Cronin's The Mummy.
I want to talk to you.
So, Lee Cronin's The Mummy follows a journalist's family whose young daughter mysteriously disappears in Egypt, only to return 8 years later alive but deeply changed. What should be a miraculous reunion quickly turns into horror as it becomes clear that something ancient and malevolent has come back with her. So what works in this film? Well, director Lee Cronin once again proves he has a strong command of tone and visual storytelling. The film is packed with striking imagery, from eerie desert vistas to suffocating domestic spaces that feel increasingly hostile as the story unfolds. The cinematography leans heavily into contrast, wide, isolating landscapes versus claustrophobic interiors, and it works. His direction is confident, especially in how he builds dread early on, favoring atmosphere and unease before things spiral into full-blown chaos.
That looks amazing.
What doesn't work in this film, however, is storytelling. It just feels unfocused and overly derivative. It kind of borrows heavily from other horror films without quite forming its own identity. The plot struggles to maintain cohesion. And there's a lot of ideas here, but not enough connective tissue to hold them together. Also, it really does that whole bad horror trope where the family just makes a series of kind of mind-boggling decisions that they have to make for the movie to continue and the plot to happen. Also, at over 2 hours, man, this movie drags. There are scenes that are padded that don't add much to the overall tension. This movie could have easily been a good 30-40 minutes shorter, and you wouldn't have lost a single thing.
Part of that was too long.
And on top of that, it heavily relies on grotesque body horror imagery, and after a while it starts to wear thin. Gore does not equal good, and after a while it's just exhausting rather than frightening. So in the end, Lee Cronin's The Mummy it's a visually impressive and boldly directed horror film that shows real ambition, but it's ultimately weighed down by a messy story and overindulgence with its own worst impulses. And also, it's not a mummy movie. It's called The Mummy, but it's really just yet another demon possesses a young girl who then goes to torture and terrify her family. We've seen it a million times. We'll probably see it another million times. If you see this movie, you're probably going to forget all about it in a week. It really doesn't stick with you. It's not the worst thing I've ever seen. It's not the best thing I've ever seen. It's probably not as bad as the Tom Cruise film, but it's nowhere near as good as the first Brendan Fraser Mummy, or any of the classic Mummy movies for that matter.
It's okay.
Well, that's all I have for you this week. Tune in next week where I give you my thoughts and feelings on whatever I've seen. In the meantime, click that like button, subscribe, leave a comment or a question, share this video with friends and enemies alike, and as always, thank you for giving me your valuable time. And I'll see you next week. Take care.